Hello and welcome to Digital Talk Podcast, the podcast where we share stories with the wider community of how digital technology and telecoms can do good. Join me, Ian Ginn.
And me, Frankie Spagnolo, on our Discovery series, as we talk to our guests and find out about themselves, what motivates them, and help celebrate their projects and achievements.
Today's episode is sponsored by IFG Consulting Europe, a leading business growth consultancy representing promising software providers selling to the telecoms, enterprise and mobile markets in Europe. Go to ifgconsultingeurope.com to find out more.
I'm here with my co-host Frankie Spagnolo, and we will be talking today with Steve Statler, who is Chief Marketing Officer at ambient IoT company Wiliot. In this episode, we want to find out more about Wiliot and what they do, and particularly hear more about their participation in the MWC Glomo Awards. Hello, Frankie.
Hi, Ian. Welcome, Steve. I'm excited to dig into the meat of what you do at Wiliot, and maybe you could explain a little bit as we get started what exactly ambient IoT is for our listeners.
Yeah, well, thanks, Frankie. Thanks, Ian, for giving me the opportunity to do that. And the Internet of Things is not a new concept, but it's a bit like AI. It's been very slow to deliver. We've been talking about AI for many decades. In the other podcast, we were talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey, and that was made in '68, and now AI is coming to fruition. IoT is similar, and we've been stuck with something that's a bit like the original vision, which was very comprehensive, but it's really the Internet of expensive things. We've been connecting gas meters and cars and appliances. The ambient Internet of Things is about connecting the everyday things that surrounds us, as well as all those other things, and doing it at a fraction of a cost, doing it for single-digit pennies. So not having to pay $100 for connectivity, but paying less than 10 cents, 5 cents to connect clothing, food, and medicine. And the ambient piece is really, it's something that surrounds us, and a bit like ambient music surrounds us, or ambient temperature is the temperature of the air that surrounds us. And in the case of the Internet of Things, it's the things that surround us are connected, but they're talking to the radios that surround us. If you think about where the room you're in, try counting the number of radios that are in that room. Imagine if you could see the radio waves, you'd be surrounded by this fountain of color coming from the television, the phone, the tablet, the smart speaker, the doorbell, maybe even the camera. So what if the standards were aligned so that all of those radios, the infrastructure, could talk to all of the things, and suddenly this wall between the physical world and the digital world comes down, and we can apply the full force of the internet and this amazing power of AI and apply it to food, clothing, medicine, car parts, parts of your house. What can we do to make things more efficient, more effective? And that's really what ambient IoT is all about.
What do you call them earlier on, Frankie? You were calling it flakes or something. You called it?
Wafers, sorry.
Yeah, so smart tags would be kind of the less exciting way. At Wiliot, we call them pixels, IoT pixels, because they're small and they bring light to things. And when you have a lot of them together, then basically you see a picture that's streaming in real time that you couldn't see before. Now, this is an audio podcast, but I'm holding one of these IoT pixels up to the camera now, and it is the size of a postage stamp. And actually, we're about to announce an implementation with one of the world's oldest postal services, which uses these things to track the assets in their supply chain. But basically, this costs in volume about 10 cents. It's got an ARM processor, and it's got no batteries. It basically harvests its energy by capturing the power that surrounds us in radio waves, and it funnels that. And this IoT pixel, as we call it, can sense temperature, it knows the location of the thing, and it can, if you integrate it into, say, a insulin auto-injector, it can know whether it's been used, whether it's been kept at the right temperature. If you attach it to a case of shrimp, it can make sure that the shrimp has been kept at the right temperature. And so when you start to see the food supply chain, the food chain in real time, there's huge opportunities for waste reduction. And we literally are seeing things that no one's ever seen before, and it's all right under our nose. But because, we're humans and we can only be in one place at a time, we don't really know how our food's been treated. But anyone that's taken a punnet of strawberries home and been really annoyed because they're fuzzy or they've lasted for just less than a day, that's some evidence that the food supply chain isn't everything that it should be, and that maybe the flow of that strawberry from the field to your refrigerator was not as direct and it wasn't kept at the right temperature. And so these are the kinds of inefficiencies and problems that we can solve when we bring just food as a supply chain online.
So on that, if I may, what is the granularity that you think is practicable? What I mean by that is, I was thinking, because I can't get bananas out of my head, is it every banana that I want to give a chip, or is it the pundit of strawberries, the actual box, if you like? So that sort of, because there must be also, from a usage perspective, is that these things have to be disposed of somewhere along the line. What happens to them as well? So you want to have enough, but not too many. And maybe there's a logical explanation to what's enough and what's not too many.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's changing over time. I love the way that you're kind of thinking this through, implementation details, great concept. So we're doing item level tracking for one of the world's biggest online retailers, tracking big expensive items. So if you order a television set or an exercycle, then there's a chance that there's a Wiliot IoT pixel on it to try and make sure that it got put on the right truck and it's heading in the right direction. That is not practical. You're not going to have one of these on every candy bar, no, even though it would be useful to make, or strawberry. So, but for a vaccine vial, I would say it makes sense. Right. If that vaccine is not going to work, if it's kept at the wrong temperature, and you want to make sure that it's been diluted before it gets put in your arm to be safe, then item level is good. But at a practical level, we have a project with one of the world's biggest grocery retailers, and we're working at the pallet and at the case level for them. So a case of product it turns out there's an ROI at that level. But we should talk about the sustainability, the recycling piece as well.
That's what I was just going to say, because, if you've got it on things like TVs, I mean, the grocery store thing, this could, in my opinion, solve world hunger. Because really, world hunger isn't about a lack of food. It's about a mismanagement of food purchasing primarily out of the United States, and then a tossing of that waste so that you get the amounts wrong, right? We make enough food.
Yes.
And so something
Absolutely.
like this really has incredibly deep potential when you think about it at broad scale. And obviously you applied for the MWC Global Awards. Was there one specific aspect of the tech for good that this could enable? Because I can see lots of them that you guys highlighted in your application.
Yeah, I mean, we focused on real-time carbon footprint measurement. It comes back to one of my favorite books, which is How Bad's a Banana? The Carbon Footprint of Everything. We are carbon illiterate as a species. We know that a Rolls-Royce is more expensive than a Fiat, but we don't know whether bananas are good or bad from a carbon perspective. And I mean, what's happening with the EU Digital Product Passport rule, which is now a rule, it's the law, has huge potential in enabling consumers to see the carbon footprint of what they're buying. But it turns out that carbon footprint can vary enormously. A product doesn't have a singular carbon footprint. If it's been sitting in a diesel-cooled refrigerated container in the back of a supermarket for 2 days, it's going to have a much bigger carbon footprint than something that's been very efficiently moved very quickly from a local source and has been put on the shelf. So one of the biggest potentials, it's really two sides. The carbon footprint measurement thing is key, both for consumers, but also for producers. So it turns out that if you don't know what the carbon footprint of something is, then look at what it costs. And that is a really good indicator of what the carbon footprint is likely to be. It's not perfect, but what I'm pointing out here is there's a correlation between carbon and cost. And what we're saying is we need to move from a world where we look at carbon at, best practice is once a year. You do your life cycle analysis as a progressive enterprise, and you say, this is what our carbon footprint is. That's what Apple's doing, and good for them. But we should be looking at it every day, every minute. And then, maybe this frustrating, we're going to reduce our carbon footprint by 20% in 30 years thing can move to, well, what have we done today? What have we done to eliminate waste, to optimize the way we're handling this product? And so that should be reflected in what the consumer sees so that they can vote with their purse and their wallet. But it should be the next Six Sigma on how the best companies are run, where if we look at a retail example, a store manager, a product category manager, a logistics manager, they can look at the carbon footprint of their part of the business every day and innovate to reduce it. And in doing that, make themselves so much more profitable, as well as doing something to save the planet. And that kind of real-time carbon footprinting was at the center of what we mentioned. And it's enabled by this technology. And the telecommunications ecosystem can be an amazing conduit for propagating this technology and getting it in the hands of millions of people.
On that point, 2 points actually spring from that. I know that the telecom operators themselves, when they're trying to measure their direct and indirect impact on CO2 and other things, they're really struggling with the indirect one. And one of the large operator groups here in Europe claimed that 95% of their sort of carbon footprint is through the supply chain, so i.e. out of their control.
Yes.
So I think that's an important point. The other aspect I wanted to ask you, because, telecom operators are also looking for ways of being relevant and, let's say, making revenue. If I look at the two questions, what role do you see the telecom operators themselves playing in this area?
Massive. I think this is a huge revenue opportunity for them that dwarfs the revenue from the smartphone. Because, how many smartphones are you going to have? Well, some of us have 2, maybe some of us have 3, but basically we're talking about going from a world where the number of connections is billions to trillions. The addressable market, if you start thinking about, well, I can make clothing more sustainable, I can make food and medicine more sustainable, then you very quickly get to an addressable market of trillions of things. Now, one of the challenges for the telco ecosystem is it tends to be kind of conservative and slow moving. And so if you start saying, well, I want to apply my existing subscription billing system and business model to the connecting your clothing, people aren't going to be wanting to pay $10 or $20 a month to connect their gloves or hat to the internet. But I would pay something to have all of those sweaters, coats, umbrellas back that I lost, if they were connected and there was no way it could be stolen or lost, then that would be something that I would definitely pay someone for. And, the telcos, they are the ones that have the personal relationship with almost every adult in the world. And this is a paradigm shift. So, one of the biggest challenges with ambient IoT is it's a completely different way of thinking about connectivity, and it can completely change the business. And so the telcos have the advertising dollars, they have the ecosystem to start to think about, well, what does my product business look like if the cornflakes I'm selling are now connected and I can sell a subscription to cornflakes and I can have a direct connection between the consumer and the producer? And how does the supply chain change? And what is the value of having that subscription recurring revenue relationship if the herbs and spices are connected? And these are massive things, and it's going to require the telco ecosystem, all of the systems integrators, the strategy consultants, the edge device manufacturers, as well as the telcos who have the ability to funnel the data, but also manage some of the privacy issues that this opens up. If I decide, I don't want my things online. Thank you very much. I bought this clothing and maybe I paid a little bit less for it because it's less likely to be stolen when it's connected but I don't want it connected. But maybe I do want my kids' medicine containers connected. Who do I phone up to manage that opt-in or that opt-out? And really, I think the telcos are in a prime position. They have that relationship.
And certainly it makes the billing easy, even if that's hundreds of fractions of a penny of whatever. And being able to make that seamless for the consumer is important for adoption. Making them have another relationship, like you said, is hard. But I think that could be driven through the recycling piece, because when there is, at least to driving the telco carriers, as much as they want to say their carbon footprint is mainly in the supply chain, we'll talk about their carbon footprint after they give us a piece of technology, right? E-waste is the absolute largest solid waste form on the planet, right? It's larger than fast fashion. And this has the ability to allow them to track their device. It allows them to get that back, give some sort of saving to the consumer for ensuring it comes back, then begin to remove materials from those components, allowing for reduction in consumption of the source goods, the source materials like copper and iron and golds and silvers and all these things that is required. It's game changing to be able to track that through and to apply that circular path of e-waste, back to them.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Frankie. And one of our first customers made furniture, and I didn't realize furniture now has electronics built into it. You think of your desk that you press the button to go up and down. So they said, give me one of these Wiliot pixels that has a URL to a web page where I can list what's in this desk, and that way help the recycling process so that people know what's in the product. And you could apply it to a power drill. Power drills are electronic, but the batteries run out. So if you have a battery-free device integrated, that can have a pointer to what we would now call a digital product passport that has the provenance, that has the bill of materials in it. And the thing that is really exciting to me is that clothing is just one example. One of our early customers was a premium fashion brand, and they have started to serialize and actually create a digital product passport for all of the shirts and jackets that they make. And they're doing that not because they're good people, they are good people, but they're doing it because fitting was one of the first drivers. You're absolutely right. But also there's a secondary market. And another way of saying that is circular economy. So think about it for a clothing manufacturer. If the clothing item has a residual value, if it's actually been built to last a generation or multiple generations, I can charge more for it. But then I can get a cut of the resell of that item when it gets resold to its next owner. And that next owner can know even how many times it's been worn and washed if it's got this connectivity built into it. So there's a huge commercial opportunity, as well as an opportunity to have just better clothing that is, been designed out of good materials that last long.
You brought me to a thought which is not in the clothes area, which is not my strength. Frankie's a lot stronger than me. On the tooling side, sometimes, let's say a tool breaks and immediately we just replace it and we buy a new one.
Yes.
Whereas what would be useful for me is a parts list. So not just before we recycle is, can I amend it as well? That's one area we haven't gone into at all is what is actually the connectivity, if you like. So you said it was radio waves, but is there a particular, and we come back to the telco aspect, is the particular technology? Bluetooth, I think, has been mentioned, but maybe there are other ones as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we use Bluetooth today, but really the vision with ambient is we use the protocols of the radios in the infrastructure that surrounds us. So it turns out the three major wireless protocols that surround us are all working on ambient IoT. So the current Bluetooth standard works today, and that's what we use in Wiliot's IoT Pixels. But the 3GPP are working on something that they actually coined the term ambient IoT for a technology bundle that's going to be in release 19, so 5G advanced. But also IEEE are working on something that has been called AMP, but will be called 802.11 BP. So there's going to be some friendly competition between the Bluetooth standards, the running and Wi-Fi in unlicensed spectrum and in the licensed spectrum. And so all of those basically are pursuing this thing that looks like anyone that was into radio frequency identification, RFID tags. These ambient IoT tags are essentially an evolution of that radio frequency identifier, and they will work across, in the future, all three of these commodity protocols, rather than having to have expensive RFID readers that cost thousands of dollars. You can use your phone and you'll be able to use your Wi-Fi access point, and you'll be able to use the infrastructure that's built into the hotel room and the concert arena. And all of these things will have a role to play as the communications medium for ambient IoT.
Fantastic. So understand, obviously, some of the standard is already there. There'll be future standards evolving, therefore devices will evolve as well. One area I'd be keen to understand, where do you think market-wise, is there a particular market that's leading in this area where it's more acutely required, or also the capability of, let's say, preconditions required to actually adopt this technology? Where are you seeing it being adopted, and in what pace?
Yeah, that's another excellent question. So as a company, Wiliot is focused on food because it's perishable. There's 40% of food is wasted before it gets to our homes. And so there's enormous opportunities there to make that system better. The cold chain handling of products is typically very poor, and that's reflected in shorter shelf life. And here in the States, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, is driving something called FSMA, which is the Food Safety Modernization Act. And there's something called Rule 204, which is starting to require much more detailed tracking of shipping and receiving events. And in the past, you didn't have to record those. And so when someone got sick from some bad spinach, the kind of the back tracing of where that spinach leaf came from took so long that basically everyone had to throw away every leaf of spinach in the country. And so this reform is coming into place, despite it's actually being fought as a last-ditch effort by special interest groups to fight it, sadly enough. But we see legislative drivers here in the States for this, for food. Healthcare, medicine, there's massive opportunities. IoT is really big already. One of our investors is Merck, the German pharmaceutical company, and we've done work with other companies in that space. That's kind of a secondary priority for us because it tends to move at a slower pace because of the level of regulations, a little more conservative, but that's going to be huge as well. General retail, again, the whole omnichannel thing of how does a brick and mortar retailer survive in the face of the threat from online retailing? And putting your inventory online is one way that you can survive, give better service with a smaller space with less staff. So that's very important. But we're also seeing it we're doing work with some airlines. So, your luggage tag, never losing your suitcase again, and having someone greet you by name as you approach the counter based on a digital product passport that's actually built into your suitcase or a luggage tag. And then having that same experience when you go to the hotel. Car manufacturing is another one. So basically every sector, there's probably an application, but we see food and medicine as being on the vanguard.
And just to remind everybody listening, because people would say, oh, I can track my luggage today. Well, yes, you can, but you're going to do it with a battery. You're going to have several other components inside of this device. Right? And so where the value is, especially at scale, is in both the size and the sustainability of this. And again, the longevity of something, right? Because, the batteries going, having to charge something, being able to be ambient and to take what is around you and use the resource around you to function is really such a brilliant part of this solution.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's about the smart tag, getting it down from $100 to 20, 30 cents down to less than 10 cents down to ultimately this will be very small numbers of pennies. And then also the infrastructure cost, but it's also the labor cost. In the past with barcodes and QR codes, NFC and RFID, it required a human being to do their job properly, or a consumer to interact.
Properly.
These ambient IoT tags are constantly broadcasting. And so they basically don't require the labor costs of getting the visibility are also much, much lower. And that is inherent in using the radios that are ambient, that surround us. And that's where these new standards, the evolution of the standards, is really important to reduce that infrastructure and labor costs.
So I've got one technical question. Are these printed or are these programmed? Because one is secure and one isn't. And also one, you have to know what you're going to put on before you send it, if you like.
Yeah, at the heart of this kind of postage stamp size sticker is a chip. So the chip is actually got 3 cores. It's got an ARM processor. It's got security material that's been provisioned on. It's got a unique identifier, a digital product passport number, a GS1 serial GTIN for people who are kind of standards nerds. So that's in there. But the actual antenna, which is the thing that harvests the energy, this can be printed, it can be etched. And we're working with a company called Westrock, which is one of the largest makers of cardboard boxes. And they're working on stripping away even the paper components to this smart label and actually having the antenna printed on the corrugate. Before that, just more efficient ways of applying the tags in the production process because the cost isn't just the tracker, it's applying the tracker.
And does a tracker, in order for like bilateral communication, does a pixel need to be in our phone in some way?
Yeah, I mean, you could add one if you wanted to have that tracker that would work even when the battery's been taken out. But no, we just need to agree on the protocol. Bluetooth is everywhere. And so that's what we use. So today, all phones can read our tags and not all phones can energize our tags. So you still need a device that will produce the energy. And the devices that do this cost $36. So it's a lot less than a typical base station or whatever. But actually, if the phone manufacturers wanted to do it, they could upgrade the firmware and use the modems that are really actually pretty strong radios to energize these tags tomorrow. So if Apple and Google wanted to do it, they could do it pretty fast. As an example, Amazon, anyone that's got an Alexa device, they don't read or energize the tags today, but a firmware upgrade in basically 10 minutes could use the radios, the Bluetooth radios and some of the other lower frequency radios to generate the energy and then read the signals. And basically every Alexa device could be upgraded in a couple of months to energize and read these tags. And I don't think that's going to happen because we're very focused today on the enterprise. But it's really a matter of everyone agreeing and deciding they want to do it and getting the standards sorted out, but then also getting all the business models. I'm struggling to do omnichannel. I'm struggling to do buy online, pick up in store. What do I do as a retailer when suddenly everything is online and the people that produce things have connected products? So it's going to take years for this to completely flow through the system, even though a lot of the technology is ready to go today.
But if I'm someone who wants to use these tags, can buy a piece of kit from you, which allows me to program my tags.
Well, we used to sell kits.
But you know what I mean? I'm trying to talk about the principle.
To do exactly
the principle
that.
Of,
yeah.
I want to obviously
the principle
at the point of source where I want to decide this is what I want to tag it with.
If you want to buy 100 million of them, we can help you tomorrow. But as a company, what we figured out was we started off basically offering them to anyone. And we realized, oh my goodness, this is a paradigm shift. We're not mature enough. We're like 250 people in Wiliot. And so we figured we have to work with just a few really large companies in order to bootstrap this concept. But today the technology is available. It's being used live. There's, one of our customers is bringing online 2 stores a day with the infrastructure to energize and read the tags. There's thousands of delivery trucks that are already equipped with readers. So it's ready to go. It's just a matter of the ecosystem being built out. Can I ask
how much one of those readers costs? Or let's say, I guess when you say reader, it's like the thing to actually have to be able to program it, right? So...
Yeah, the tags are already programmed. So the tags cost anywhere between 25 cents and 10 cents today. So those are the things that actually go on the the pallet or the case of strawberries.
But sorry, at that point, just to be clear, at that point, the information on the tag is there. It's printed, it's already embedded.
Yes.
So it's not later on.
So it's already got its identity, but what it doesn't have is the association with the information about the thing. So in the cloud, you need an app that is going to be your serialization app, your traceability app, your food safety app. So this is really just like a platform. And so there's thousands, millions of apps that still need to be written that are dealing with this concept of a unique
that identifier means
identity.
X or do X or whatever it is. Okay,
yes.
Sorry, I apologize to
So the tags somewhere between 25 cents and 10 cents.
I apologize on that.
Yeah, the readers are anywhere between $36 for this particular device to $100, or if you want something that's going to light up a truck, maybe a small number of hundreds of dollars. So that's kind of the price of the hardware.
And when you use Bluetooth, I mean, obviously that's the connectivity piece that's passing the information, right? Between it and the cloud, it and the phone, wherever the app may lie, it and the thing. What about when the connectivity is down? Let's say in crisis moments for a network or the hurricane in New York, like what is the process at that moment?
Well, so you can put intelligence in the edge, but today we're really reliant on this connected world of satellite and cellular. So it's a cloud technology. Can you work locally? Yes, you can. But our paradigm is the simplest one, which is everything's online. And there's so many variations of this that will eventually come to pass that will allow local resolution and local applications. But that's not what we as a company are focused on today.
But you brought up a very interesting point, which was you alluded to different revenue models, business models. You know, people can think of what they want to on this and how they can add value. And that comes back to the comment about the telcos. Question is how imaginative are they, and are they the right people to bridge that gap? Pardon the pun, but it is a gap.
Precisely. It's going to be tough. I think there are some telcos that will leap at this and others that will really struggle. And these are massive organizations that are addicted to an amazing business model where every adult is paying them every month significant amounts of money. So they're going to have to adapt their billing systems. Probably, if I was giving advice to the CEO of Vodafone, I'd say you need a separate business unit that is focused on this, where they're kind of throwing away the playbook and thinking completely differently about this. And that applies whether you're a telco or, frankly, whether you're a consumer packaged goods company or a food company. What does my business look like when I can have a direct relationship with the consumer? That's a completely different paradigm.
But maybe remember 2010, where Ericsson came onto the market in the IoT market and made a big, bold claim that there'll be 50 billion devices connected. What you've actually said is that's the beginning, right?
That's
not even touching the edges of this. So maybe we should now state, and come up. We're not Ericsson, but we're going to make a claim of trillion bits will be connected. And it would be the IoT divisions who'd be the natural place to start by, I guess, with the telcos. But anyway, it's been fascinating to talk to you about this. I did want to ask you a question, particularly around, other than what you're doing now, promoting a better world, what other companies impress you and that sort of you benchmark yourselves with in some of the work that you do?
I'm a marketer, so I tend to look at companies that are great at that, great at building brands. We're privileged to work with some amazing large companies. So I'm impressed by our customers. So we're starting to work with postal services, which, some of these postal services, they were founded in
it's the beginning of telecoms. It's the beginning of telecoms, before telecoms. They're the actual mother.
Pre-Elizabethan. You look at
telecoms came out of post.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, the GPO and British Telecom, they were all linked. And so I am impressed by organizations of massive scale that are able to do innovation, because that is really hard. Doing a startup is hard, but changing a really big company and innovating, that's even harder. There's no shortage of interest in our product, but the challenge is who has scale, which is obviously what we're looking for, but who has the ability to deploy it. And some of the very large retailers are technology companies, and they don't buy software, they buy software companies, and they end up creating their own software. And I am just inspired and appreciative by anyone that can execute a traditional business model, but also be thinking and actually doing something about these paradigm shifts that we're talking about.
Well, it's nearly impossible for those companies to do that. I mean, it can be even just because of the short-term requirement that comes down from the board on quarterly earnings. It's so built into how these large companies have to operate because of how they're valued that we're really at a critical point. And technologies like this and companies that choose to make that effort, which you're talking about, which really is Herculean to do, is a pivotal moment for them to be the pioneers of breaking some of those old standards. And I think it's going to be necessary. So those who are getting on board with you early and making that change really are going to benefit from it, because we're not going to escape it, right? Especially if we've got the planet at the heart of what we're trying to do, or at least involved in some of the decision-making process. And actually, there's several entities, and I won't go into this on the podcast, but this truly is an area of deep interest for me. Congratulations on what you're doing, and to the team at Wiliot. It's a big part of how we are going to experience, calculate, control, and be able to communicate with our environment as that becomes the environment of everything, you know.
And that brings us on nicely to celebrating what Wiliot does. But is there someone out in your community that you want to give a shout out for contributing to a better world?
I think I mentioned him on the companion podcast, and maybe at the beginning of this one, Mike Berners-Lee. Okay. He's doing some really important work, I think, on climate, professor of climate science at Lancaster University. I appreciate his ability to get his head around technology, but also go to the meta issues. Like he's working on a new book on truth in politics. You know, how can we change things when we can't even believe what we're hearing from our leaders? And so I really think that I appreciate people that can span multiple disciplines and connect the dots between technology and society. And I think, that's a bit of what you're doing with this podcast. You're looking for the way technology can be used in positive ways. And I believe that ambient IoT is a great example. It's completely revolutionary, but unless people are thinking about it, unless we're educating people, unless we're getting the word out, then nothing's going to happen. And so I admire people that have the kind of the depth and the intellect to think things through deeply, but then also can bring it to the attention of the world and make it easy for people to digest and actionable. So well done in doing what you're doing. And if people haven't heard of Mike Berners-Lee, then buy a couple of his books, because I think they can help make a difference.
And thank you very much. I think you're closing off the podcast really nicely. But again, to the audience, those people who would like to hear more from you and what you're doing is you have your Mr. Beacon Ambient IoT podcast. And I suggest anyone who wants to know more should listen to that. There's some interesting and fascinating episodes. Thank you very much for your time, Steve, and make yourself available.
No, it's a privilege to get to chat with you at length. Some amazing questions from both you, Ian and Frankie.
So thank you very much for your time. Thanks for taking the time to listen to our new podcast. If you have any feedback or know of any stories to be told involving digital technology and telecoms doing good, then please do let us know via our email, getinTouch@digiteltalk.com. Also, feel free to send us a message on LinkedIn. It'd be great to hear from you.
Before we go, if you've enjoyed today's episode and would like to support the podcast, then don't forget to give us a follow and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Also, if you'd like to leave us a review or share it with your colleagues, It really helps us on the channel. Thanks so much for being a part of our audience today, and hopefully you'll join us next time.
That's all we've got time for, so it's goodbye from me.
And that's goodbye from him.
Bye
for now.
now.